Welcome back, everybody. Thanks again for joining us on another episode of Rap Drinks. Today we have the distinguished honor of being joined by our special guest, Mayvis Payne. She is an author, speaker, and an artist. She has written a book by the title of Lipgloss Chronicles, Confessions of a Celebrity Makeup Artist. So excited to have you on the podcast, Mavis. Thank you for making the trip out here to our beautiful, awesome studio, and excited to hear your stories. So cheers.
Woo! I love it.
Cheers.
Thank you. This is gonna be a long distance fucking cheers. Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers with spirit.
Cheers
with spirit.
Yeah. For good
That's
luck.
right. Looking nice.
So right off the bat, I just want to ask you, Mavis, why did you want to be introduced as artist and not makeup artist?
Mainly because, from the start of my career to now, it has kind of evolved, right? Mm-hmm. So when I first started, makeup artist, then along the way I became an author. So it just encompasses everything.
I feel like it's more of an evolution, like it kind of embodies more of what you do.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, when I'm being approached, for jobs, they're going to say makeup artist, but never want to put myself in the box.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good way to look at it. And actually, you and I met on a job, and I forget how I got your contact info, but I was producing a documentary, and we were shooting at a studio in Manhattan, and we were doing like these talking heads interview on green screen, and the documentary had like a very serious topic to it.
I remember.
And so the people that we had are, not to say anything poorly about our subject, but the conversation can feel a little dry. And so I remember that, having you on set, the talent would arrive, they would look a little maybe like nervous or kind of disgruntled for being there, and we'd send them to you, and by the time they came out of the chair, they were just like energized and happy and like ready to go. And I remember that sticking with me because it was like Mavis just like talks with them, she like warms them up, and so when they like are on camera, they're just like ready to go. And I remember that after that I was like, I gotta get Mavis on every job that I do now, because it just kind of alleviates the responsibility of all the other people on set a little bit who like have to deal with talent who might not be the easiest to work with, or just might need a little bit of a pep talk. That was just something that always stuck with me, I remember.
Yeah, well, you guys made it easy. A lot of people say, well, you were great to work with, but it's a team effort, So the producer, especially with someone I had never worked with before, you're going in with a little bit of trepidation, like, I don't know what to expect. But, you guys made it very easy. And, I never really endeavored to, or say in my mind, I'm going to make this person feel, I just treat them the way I would want to be treated. And I even say that when people's like, well, how is it working with celebrities? And I say, well, I just talk to them like I'm talking to you, because I think that they respect that. A lot of times you'll get people who are a little bit reserved, but if you just don't treat them any differently, I think they respect that. And so I always wanted to make the person feel like I would want to feel, and that basically came from me working in retail beauty when I started my very first job, because you were getting people who would never, some had never worn makeup, some, were afraid of makeup, and you just make them feel comfortable. And then, it just kind of takes all of the anxiety away, I think.
Yeah, you do a lot of that. It comes from like that other, when you talk about your titles, your intro right now, the speaker side of you, I think, right? Because you're the front line. I feel like when you're like the face of the production when an artist comes in and they sit and they're getting their makeup done, like you're that first line of defense. So, so like you break that, that. I don't know if trepidation is the right word, but like when people are scared to be on set and you just come in and you're like, oh, and you calm them down and they have that repertoire now with someone like, oh, okay, this is going to go and this is going to be flow. So did you learn a lot of that when you were working in retail? Did that transfer for you over into working into productions?
Yes and no. I feel that I've always been a people person.
Okay.
So, a lot of what we do, you're bringing in your own personality. Right. And so I've always been a people person, but to the yes side of that is that as, becoming a makeup artist and starting out in retail beauty, it taught you what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say. But what I found in my, starting out with retail beauty is that people would get in my chair and tell me like the most secret things. So it taught me that they must feel comfortable. You know what I mean? And so I always try to bring that with me because, the side of retail beauty is obviously you want them to spend money, right? So if they are, comfortable, if they trust you, then that's just a win for you. So yes and no to answer your question.
And when you think about retail beauty and then coming in and working in the industry, like what was that transition for you? Like how did you make that step? Did you always want to be in the industry or like did it pivot for you somehow?
No, I didn't even endeavor to be a makeup artist.
Really?
I worked in private sector in Washington, D.C., and on my commute in the mornings, women would come up to me and was like, I like your makeup. And after about 4 years of that, it was like, ding, ding, ding. And so I started to research schools. I found one in Annapolis, Maryland. And, after I finished, I was like, you know what? I'm going to apply for a job at MAC because then, MAC was like the cult following, it was like all the rave. And so I was already a MAC wearer. So I wore MAC and I happened to go to, to one of the stores in Georgetown. And as an afterthought, I asked the lady, I was like, are you guys hiring? She goes, we are. So she gave me, an application, and the process was just like really, really long. You have to go through all these things. But anyway, I started working in retail beauty. And after about a year, I was helping a customer. And, MAC teaches you all of the things like how to deal with the customer. Like this particular customer she wasn't receiving, it seemed that she wasn't receiving anything that I was saying, right? Because she came in and she wanted to begin a skincare regimen. So I'm walking her around and I'm showing her all these things and just stone faced, right? And so at the end of it, she goes, okay, I'll take everything. Now, I have poker face, but I'm going, yes, because I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, like my goal is made for the week. And so I rang her up, which was hundreds of dollars, by the way. And at the end, she goes, do you have a card? And I always had my MAC business card and my personal business card because that was the first thing, once I became a makeup artist, I had my own business cards, right? Mm-hmm. And so I gave her both, and she goes, I'm a producer at BET. And she goes, I'm going to go back and tell the person who hires makeup artists about you.
Oh, shit.
Damn.
And I was like, okay, but
You didn't think twice about it, right? Is that what it is?
no, but by this time I had met so many people and I had learned that, people get caught up in the moment and they'll say, oh, I'm going to call you, and you never hear from them.
Right.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, didn't think anything about it. And sure enough, she did. And to this day, if I teach a class in DC, she comes. Like we're still like so cool. She'll call me and it's like, hey, are you gonna be in DC? I got a gig, blah blah blah. So yeah, that's how it started in TV.
And how was that like? She calls you. She hires you on a BET show, or is it like a one-day shoot? Like, what was that process like for you?
Well, she referred me to, at the time they had a person that. A makeup artist, but the makeup artist was also an agent, right?
Okay.
So they would hire her for her shows, but she also hired makeup artists. So she referred me to that person. The person did end up calling me. Never met her. She just went on someone else's word and hired me for it. The first gig was like, I want to say it was AOL. Now I'm dating myself. It was an AOL shoot or something. But she had never met me. She just went on this person's word, sent me out on a gig. Wow. She ended up hiring me for, as one of her artists. It didn't end too great, but yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah.
It ended up, when you're green, when you first start out in the industry, unfortunately, you'll get people that take advantage of it because there are a lot of things you don't know.
Yeah.
But it was a great stepping stone. So I tell people, like, even the bad experiences have, value.
Yeah.
Because now I know, because of that experience, I know what not to do, what to look for. It taught me to not just sign on the dotted line, but really read what I'm signing. But that experience opened up the door. When she left BET, then they hired me in her place.
Oh, nice.
So that went from one gig to now getting booked on a lot of different things.
That's a network artist. That's interesting because like, I wouldn't think that it's like the network itself has somebody. I would think that it's show by show, producer by producer kind of basis. But it's if they're doing all their own content, like
no. You're exactly right. It was, but she was. I mean, she was there constant. That she was always calling.
Awesome.
So basically, like, she was basically what we would call the key.
Right.
Makeup artist. So what happened is they would have a show and they'll say, hey, we need 5 makeup artists. So she would hire the makeup artist, but everyone was
I see. But she's she's like the number one.
Yeah, she was number one.
Going from working in retail, I'm assuming in a place like that, you have disposal of almost everything in front of you because you're trying to show off the products that are in the store. But now you're going on set. How did you decide what to bring with you that first time you weren't in a store and could just grab whatever you needed?
That's a great question. Well, the first thing I learned is that retail beauty is completely different from television makeup, right? And so those are things that aren't necessarily told to you. You kind of figure it out, right? Yeah. The fortunate thing about going into like a television network or the show that I worked on the very first time for BET, the fortunate thing about it is that it was a show that had a lot of urban talent on it. And so most of them were already wearing MAC.
Okay.
Oh, sick.
Yeah.
Yes. So that was the easy part. Now, where it was a little bit of a challenge is when I first had to do, like, I want to say I did a pilot for, like, Al Jazeera. Can I say that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can say whatever you want to say.
You tell us. Did you sign an NDA?
No, just kidding. I did a pilot for Al Jazeera and didn't necessarily have the colors that I needed.
Different skin tones.
Different skin tones where, like you said, at MAC, I could have just walked over there and grabbed something, right?
Yeah.
So that's when I started to like, oh, I'm an artist. I can just put a little bit of this together and a little bit of that. And it's kind of like trial and error. You do it. But then you have to do it with confidence, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
You can't go into it where the talent is looking like, oh, my gosh, she doesn't know what she's doing.
Yeah.
And so I started to custom blend is what they call it. So I started to do that. And the more I did it, the more comfortable I got.
That's awesome.
And so I like to tell artists, like, don't pigeonhole yourself and say, oh, I just want to work on these type of shows, or I just want to do this, because there's a plethora of projects, and then you learn so many different things by doing various.
Yeah.
And there's also like certain products you probably have to use because some people have like allergies and stuff to certain products, right? Did you learn that on the fly too, or did you kind of know that from schooling, like how to maneuver with that kind of thing?
I learned about not necessarily so in makeup school. There are 2 parts. There's makeup artistry, and then there's aesthetics. So aesthetics is teaching you about the skin. Makeup is just makeup.
Okay.
So I didn't do the aesthetics part. So my instructor did not spend a lot of time talking about skincare. Obviously, we talked about it a little, but it wasn't in depth, right? So to answer your question, even to this day, if someone sits in my chair, the very first thing I ask is, do you have any allergies? Because it's something that a person may never even think about. It could be, during COVID, I was wearing gloves. They could be allergic to latex. So I always made sure I had non-latex gloves, those type of things.
Yeah.
So I would just ask, because once I was working on a show, oh my gosh, and I put lashes on this lady, and her contact did this, like just popped out. And it was so weird, but but I discovered that she was allergic to the glue. So whenever so those are just things that you learn. You know, I wouldn't have necessarily known to ask her, like, have you, I will ask, like, have you worn lashes before? Have you worn false lashes before? But all products are not created equal. So, this particular product she was allergic to. So, I
Did
tried
she
to
have
ask.
like a crazy breakout or anything? Or
She didn't have a breakout. It's just that her contact was just, every time I put it on there, it would just do that. So we couldn't do the.
I'm sure now especially, I'm sure there's like vegan artists too that are like, you got to use a certain kind of. So like, how much time before a shoot do you have to even talk to some of the talent to figure that kind of stuff out?
Sometimes not a lot. Yeah, sometimes not a lot. Thank God I haven't really had where someone is just like have an allergic reaction on the fly. Because I've worked a lot of live shows, so that would be devastating.
Oh, God, yeah.
Shit.
We got a 2-minute delay to figure this out. Like,
that live shows is a whole nother.
Go to commercial.
Oh my gosh! Like I learned my technique from working on live shows. I was working on a live show, and they'll tell you, like, I always say, how much time do I have?
Yep.
Oh, you have 45 minutes. Okay, cool. So talent sits in the chair, and Mac taught us to start with the eyes first. Do eyeshadow first.
Why?
Because all eyeshadow falls down. And if I've already done the face, then that's just another step. So eyeshadow falls down. Now I have to wipe it away. Now I have to, reapply that foundation.
Gotcha.
So Mac taught us to do eyes first, right? So I was going to start with this lady's eyes. And as soon as I put the eyeshadow primer on, they was like, she got to go right now. And I'm like, she got to go. She got to go. So I'm cringing because I know that this show is going to air in a couple months and I don't want to see it, right?
Yeah.
Thank God she was a young girl with, pretty nice skin. And it wasn't ideal, but it didn't look bad, but it taught me that now I'm going to do foundation first, because you can get away with not having eyeshadow on, but not many people can get away with being on film with no foundation.
Also told you when you get 45 minutes, you actually don't get 45 minutes.
No, they were saying 45 minutes for the whole day. Each every single person. They didn't lie. It wasn't, yeah.
45 minutes. I'm like, what?
As an artist, then, like, the makeup you put on a person before they get on camera, that is your art. Like, that's the work that you do. So do you ever, like, kind of, put your foot down and say, no, I'm not done. Like, you need to give me another 5 minutes, because that's like when that person gets on camera, you want to make sure that how they look is good, because it's a representation of your work, right? Like, do you ever have the opportunity to have these battles? Do you pick those battles, or you just say whatever? Like,
I've had that. I've taken the opportunity, but only with someone that I have rapport with. Obviously, someone that's my first time, I'm not going to give you that much pushback.
Yeah.
But on this particular show, I would say to the producer, "Do you want it done fast, or do you want it done right?"
Yeah.
And she usually is going to go with, I want it done right. But I also have to keep in mind that it's not the Mavis show. I'm hired help. It's their show.
Yeah.
And if me taking my time is going to, stall their show or prevent the show, it's not worth it. But what it did teach me is how to work fast. Yeah, it taught me how to work fast, and it's just little things that you do to not hold, because I never want, like, I'm always early. I never want anyone to be waiting on the makeup artist.
If you're on time, you're late.
I never want anyone to be waiting on the makeup artist. But normally I'm gonna just try to do what they ask me to do. But it's frustrating, especially when you like hurry up and make, cut little corners, and then it stalls for like another hour. And
Yeah.
You're like,
Right. You're like, why'd you rush me?
yeah,
Hurry up and wait.
Start over.
exactly. So yeah.
Well, that learning curve for you in BET, being there for the first time, right? Doing retail, now you're in BET. Like, what mistakes did you make that were like really pivotal moments for you? Like, did you put on retail makeup and then get told that they have way too much makeup on for camera?
Yes.
Next question.
Yes. That was something that I had to learn. Like I didn't know going in that retail beauty is different. You know, I wasn't taught that. So yes, I made mistakes. I've I've actually, saw my work and it's like, that doesn't look good, Not necessarily someone tell you. Usually it's not going to be a producer or anybody. Usually it's going to be the talent. It's like,
talent.
oh, that's way too much. But you know what? I've learned, though, that what they deem is too much is actually perfect for television.
It's just not what they do.
It's just not what they do. It's not what they're accustomed to. And even to this day, I have a corporate client. And every time they hire me and this executive comes in and she's always so happy to see me. And then I do her makeup and she goes, oh, I think it's too much. And now her assistant says, you always say that, but it always looks perfect. And then she's like, oh, you're right. So, but yes, I've had some mistakes. I remember once doing someone's makeup and cutting corners, like really trying to work really, really fast. And the eyelash was like popping up because it wasn't like secure. And I was just like, oh my gosh, do they see that? So it's things, it happens.
Was it an eyelash you glued on and then it was just like doing its own thing?
What'd you do in that? What'd you do in that moment? Did you bring it up?
Nope.
There's like this weird thing. It's like if like because you did it, you're looking at it way closer. Other people probably like they're looking at 100 other things. Yeah. It's like if I don't say it, then nobody else will notice it. But if I say it, then I look like an asshole.
Only thing, and it's the only thing they see at that point if you point it out. Yeah.
As long as they don't zoom in, we're good.
Oh man, do you ever have to let's say a guy first time that's gonna be on camera who's like never had makeup done? Do you ever have to like talk them into it, like kind of ease them into it?
Yes, I was hired by a photographer to do makeup for a rap band. Okay. And one of the guys was adamant, no, I'm not putting on any makeup, and this is a photo shoot, right? I'm not putting on any makeup. And he was just going, and I said, and I was pretty green then, but I had been doing it for a while. So I said, do you know T.I.?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course.
Well, no, I asked the guy.
You asked him.
You guys weren't there, okay? You weren't there.
I was like, do you know T.I.? And then I started naming all these people that I worked with. And I said, they have to wear makeup. I said, because they understand their craft. And they understand that they want to look their best, right? And I just basically talked him into it. And now, when I would see him, he was like, oh my gosh, you talked me into it. My photos look great. So yes, I've had to, because most people, not just guys, but a lot of people think I have great skin, right? Because some people have great skin and they think I don't need makeup. And especially now with 5G, whatever we have now, it's like, no, 8K. 5G is kind of 4K. Is that it?
We have 8K now and 16K.
Yeah, 5G is internet speed. 4K is the resolution. Yeah, no, that's fine. It's a bunch of
4K, 5G,
bunch of letters or
all
numbers.
Of it, right?
It's all
different departments.
Yeah.
But I would tell them, it's like, the camera picks up everything, and so I basically had to sell it. And they became one of my biggest, most frequent clients.
It's just stroking the ego. Like you just got to like appeal to them in a different way.
Well, it's also what you were saying. Like you're not used to being in front of the camera, but you know what things in front of the camera look like. If it's like if your job is to make music, camera's not usually involved in that. So the first time you get in front of that, somebody's going to need to tell you how that actually works.
Yeah.
So it's like it's good that you have that ability to be like, I've been here, you haven't.
Yeah.
It's like you need to tell them that they don't know.
Yeah, and you know what? And the producer, after a while, the producers on the show they wouldn't even have that conversation with the talent. They'll be like, "Go talk to Mavis," because they know I'll be like, "No, you need it. Sit down." It's like, Mavis, talk to him. It's like, okay, I got it. Yeah.
I mean, good makeup's got to save money on the back end too. It's like if they're not retouching everything because it actually looks good, like, it might actually save them a couple days of post, or
That's a valid point.
Yeah,
It's a
very
point.
valid.
I mean, and that applies to everything on set. Like, just fix it in fix it now.
Can't you just brush on makeup and post?
Oh man,
Just hates it. Everyone's like, oh, just fix it in post.
that's always a thing too. It's like you work with people that come from photo, and then you put them in video, and they think that like you can fix an image, a video, the same way you can fix a photo in post. It's like they're not at all the same. They're very different. It's one frame versus like thousands.
Yes, yes. And even different, this is something I learned too in the field, is that even venues, for example, I know you guys have probably seen articles where celebrities are on the red carpet and someone takes their picture and you could see the white powder up under their eyes and stuff like that. Yeah. And so those are things you have to teach yourself, like, that was a flash. You can't use, powder. So it's just learning. It's a learning curve.
So that's different than you're saying video versus photography. So that in itself is two different types of makeup.
Totally different.
What are the
not necessarily different types of makeup, but how you set the makeup makes a difference.
What are those differences?
For example, flash photography is going to pick up anything that you put up under the eye that's white, right? And so while it looks really good in the makeup chair, in the makeup room, under those nice dim vanity lights, you don't have control of where the person is going to go after they get out of your chair. Yeah. So my rule of thumb is just stay away from those type of products, but those are things that no one is going to tell you that when you're first starting out. You're just going to kind of like, unfortunately, learn it by making a mistake. So
we kind of do that. I do set lighting, so it's kind of one of those things too on set when they're doing like last looks or like touch-ups or anything like that. When we set a work light in like the makeup tent, or like anytime they're not on stage, we try to use the same light that we have that they're shooting in front of. Yeah. Because it's like even if there's a gel on it or something, if you're doing the makeup in a completely different light than what they're going to be, and then they get in front of the camera, you're like, that's not what I just did. But so it's like, and it's little things like a lot of people I don't think understand that. Like they're like, where do you want hair and makeup to set up? It's like under the fucking lights, please. Please be close to
please, as much lighting as possible. I mean, I'm always like cringing when I see the photographer or the DP or someone start pulling out, I don't know what those lights, what are those sheets are called? Like you'll have these little sheets, like the blue ones and the yellow ones. And I'm thinking like, is it because the makeup is not good? What I mean? No. But I learned that it has to do with the lighting. Yeah. And so, like, I was just on set the other day, and it was like a makeshift. They gave me like a makeshift makeup room. And when the person went on the actual set, they were like, "Maybe so you want to come in?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Of course.
And the first thing I'll say is, can I see them on monitor? Because I know that the lighting is different. So I want to make sure what I saw in there is the same.
And that's something you learned later on in your career, like, let me get to monitor before I make any decision. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. Because, once I see them in monitor, I may want to, I might want to make some adjustments or something. So I always now, it's like, can I see them first? I'm like, sure.
Yeah. And I think the monitor component of it is not just important in the beginning when you're doing the makeup, but throughout. Because I worked with a makeup artist recently when I was in LA for a short, and she was like,
I'm glad you said LA, because I was like, what? You didn't call me? No, just kidding.
I was in LA, and they already had someone at the time. But the person they had didn't hang out around the monitor. And I think that was a mistake. Maybe you feel differently, but like she did her job. She was nice. She was cordial. But then afterwards, she was like, great, I'm done. And we're filming scenes here, so she didn't stay by the monitor to do last looks and see what she thought. And we ended up having a couple issues with makeup.
I mean, would you guys call her in for last looks and she wouldn't show up, or
no? We would call her in, but it was such a indie production that it was like you're doing 20 jobs. Like I was ADing, but I was also like script A, and I was also doing like first AC work, or no, second AC when like doing the sticks. So it's like at the same time, it was like everyone was pulling their weight, and I think there was a part of it that like she was getting paid, I think, appropriately for her job. Like a lot of people took cuts, like I took a cut, the producers took a cut, but we paid the makeup artist and the wardrobe like their actual rates. And because of it, like I thought I would expect more. And I think it was more like she wasn't hanging around the monitor. She wasn't present. She was like on her phone and takes and not looking to be like, oh, let me see in this. But when we called last looks, like she would eventually come. But I think I'm asking, my question to you is like, do you feel like it is a standard practice to be by the monitor, or do you feel like it's going above and beyond as a makeup artist to be by the monitor?
Well, I think in a sense, it is going above and beyond, but I always want to go above and beyond.
So
right?
That's your standard.
Yes, because here's the thing. Like when I first started, I started where the set was away from the makeup the makeup room. So on the particular show that I worked on, I hired an assistant. So the assistant could be backstage, and then I could be doing the next person, and then we, kind of switch off. But what that taught me is that by the time they call for, okay, we need the makeup artist, by the time I get there, you know what I mean? It just makes more sense to me to be there. Now, if it's super, super hot, because, you guys know I don't really like the heat. If it's super, super hot, I'm going to, do it, and I'll look at the monitor, and I'll just be on the outside where it's cooler. But I think just going above and beyond, because you want your work to be its best, right? And a lot of times, again, the lighting is different from the makeup room. So you want to look at it and say, okay, it looks good. Because a lot of times, camera guys and DPs, they may see something, but you have a trained eye.
Right.
So why not just make sure it's perfect to you, and then,
take it from there.
Take it from there.
You talked a little bit about control, like what's in your
I'm
control.
a control freak. That's why.
But like, what are you in control of versus what are you not in control of, right? When you go to a set, and you don't have the vanity you want versus like, the setup you want, like how do you maneuver through that for yourself?
Gosh. Wow. I'm just thinking to some of the sets that I've been on where I had no mirror, the light, like once I did this, I did this shoot and we were in like a dive bar and it was like in the dungeon, like no lighting whatsoever. And then everything was, I don't even think they had lights. Like it was just super dark in there. So I always try to bring my glasses with me, right? And I also always have some type of light, whether it's my phone, my flashlight. So because you just never know what you're going to encounter. But one of the things that I have control over that I'm a stickler about is time management. Like I cannot stand to be late. So I've fired assistants because they're late. Like so that's one of the things that I have control over on set. And then the other thing, most jobs don't take your creativity away. They trust that you know what you're doing. And, I have control of my work. I have control of my work ethic. I have control of my temperament, my personality, the things I don't have control, you don't have control. Like I said, it's not the Mavis show.
Yeah.
You kind of like, okay, I try to ask questions. Okay, what is the shoot about? Because a lot of times we'll just get the call, we'll get the call, but we don't necessarily know what the shoot is about. So it's like, what is the shoot about? 'Cause I try to have an idea
Right.
of what it's about. But yeah,
But you also need like skin complexion, right? Like who are the artists, right? Who are the people you're going to do the makeup for? Because that also matters.
People now, I find, I don't know, it seems like since COVID, a lot of producers will say, I'll send you photos. And I never request photos because I always think if you're a professional, if you're an artist, you can figure it out, right? But I just think they want you to be prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have no control over the person's skin at all. I've had some instances where didn't matter what I did, it just wasn't gonna look right to me because of the person's skin.
And what happened in that moment?
You just got to do the best you can and hope it looks good on film.
Was it something with the makeup, or was it just the
Skin.
complexion?
Like a
their
less is
skin.
more kind of approach or something like too much foundation's never going to look good. It's always going to be patchy or.
Well, if there's an issue, most of the time, the more you do, the more you're going to draw attention
Right.
to it, right? And so I tell aspiring artists that, you guys are focusing on makeup, or not just aspiring artists, even young girls who are interested in makeup. I always say, why don't you perfect your skin first? Because your makeup is only going to look as good as your skin. So there are just some things that makeup can't correct. So I've had some instances where, I just had to do the best that I could, and it is what
What was
what it is.
one of those imperfections or something or not
This
imperfection,
person's
but like
skin was really just very, very discolored. And I don't know what the proper term is, but we call them craters, where your skin, you have really, really huge.
Acne scars or something.
They're not acne scars, but they're almost like indentations in the skin. And, I primed it, moisturized, all of those type of things. And
nothing.
it looked better, but it wasn't, perfect. And I just couldn't get it there.
So when you talk about being an artist and not necessarily needing the photos of the people that you're going to do makeup for, that confidence came over time, I'm going to say, right? Like it wasn't right away. What would you say for the viewers that don't necessarily have the confidence, things that they may want to have and be prepared for in their kit, or, just for if they're doing men versus women?
I would say ask for photos. If you're not comfortable, if a photo is going to get you there, then do whatever is necessary to get there, because the end goal is to be the expert. The end goal is to hopefully get called back again, and also for the talent to be pleased. So if you're not confident, I would say, oh, do you have photos?
Yeah.
But I will also, on the back end, I will also make it a point to not ever be in that situation again where you have to rely. Because suppose the producer goes, I don't have any photos. You know what I mean? Now what are you going to do? So I would always say, educate yourself and, make your kit as, readily as available as possible, that you would never, ever, it's like, okay, I can mix something up. Because there's been so many times that I've been on set and the foundation just wasn't perfect. And just keep mixing it, So it's up to you as the artist. It's not up to the producer to make your job easy. You're the expert. They're calling you in. You don't take your car to the mechanic and say, and the mechanic is like, well, I don't know.
What do you think?
I'll see if I have the tools.
Well, I mean,
Well,
I don't know.
Some
You've been to
people do.
some mechanics.
You're talking about building your kit. I'm assuming when you're going to a spot, you're telling them your rate. That's including your kit. Do you always build your kit off site and you're like, I want to add this, or do you use productions to add and grow your kit sometimes? The answer is yes, but I just want to hear you say.
Like, what's the gaff tape of the makeup kit? I guess like
what are my staples?
What the expendables?
Well, no, I'm curious. Like, do you think it's okay to like, hey, I'm on a production, I've got everything I need, but this new thing came out, I want to have this show order it for me so I can have it in my kit for next time and play with it?
Do you know shows that will order stuff for you?
I'm curious because I like, you know, it's like we get an Expendables like budget when we do TV shows and stuff. Like every episode you get X amount of tape. You know, it's like you could buy black wrap, things like that. Like, do shows give you that budget to buy that stuff, or are they expecting you to come with everything?
Dude, everything's an expendable.
I don't think I've ever worked a show where they say, hey, you know, is there anything you need that we can provide for you?
That sounds crazy to me. I'm very surprised by that. Like, no, if you're doing a long running thing or something like that, and it's like you've been using the same product for this actress or whatever, and now you're on episode 7, and like your tube of gloss has run out. Like you can't go to production and say I need another one of this. You have to buy it on your own.
So I will not name this particular network, but
That's always starts off.
Is it ABC? Is it NBC?
No, I was working on this particular anchor, and I had been working with her. Like, she always requested me, and the particular powder that I use on her is Chanel powder. So I don't have to tell you that it was very expensive.
Yeah.
And you know, I've been doing this for years, and then like I was like, listen, can you guys? And they were like, no. They will not pay for it.
What?
Nope. So, yeah,
That's a good thing to know, because that is actually surprising to me.
But most shows offer you a kit fee. Right? So, you know, I try to have everything in my kit that I'm going to need, and I've always just covered it with the kit fee yeah. But.
And can I ask, I'd like to talk about more in depth for our viewers, like what is that kit fee? Like, what is the rate for a kit fee? What is the rate for a starting makeup artist, like, that you would expect?
That's funny, because I didn't know anything about kit fee for the first 5 years of me doing this.
BT
You were figuring it out on your own? Like, you didn't have a mentor or anything, or?
No. So the beauty industry, whether you guys know it or not, you probably don't, because you're on this side and you don't care. But, but like the beauty industry, hair, makeup, like very competitive, and like no one's. Which is why, you know, in my book, I try to give little tips, because these are things like people didn't tell you. For example, I was hired to work on a show. And there are only 2 makeup artists. So the other makeup artist had been there doing it for like 4 or 5 years, right? And so I got hired to work with her. And by this time, I had started doing other things. Talk about not pigeonholing yourself, where you're just doing a specific type of makeup. And so I was, again, reading the paperwork, and I saw this thing that says box rental. It's like, what's that? So I looked it up, and it's basically a kit fee. Mm-hmm. So I had been doing this show. By this time, I had been doing the show. This was my 2nd year. And so I went to the producer. I was like, hey, because they weren't offering us a kit fee.
Oh, man.
So I went to the producer. I said, hey, I saw on here that on the paperwork that there's a space for a box rental. I said, you know, can me and the other makeup artists, can we get a kit fee? Now, granted, this particular project was we did 2 weeks. So that's a kit fee for every day that I did 2 years prior. The other 2 years never got.
Damn.
That sucks.
And so I said, can I get this kit fee? And she goes, sure. She said it so quickly that I knew that, like,
they were waiting until somebody else mentioned it, because why would they?
Why would they?
Yeah.
So she goes, sure. So this is like probably an additional $500 in my check, right?
Yeah.
So I say to the other makeup artists who had been doing it for 5 years, I said, hey, just so you know, I went to the producer and I asked, for kit fee, and she said we could have it. She goes, how did you know to ask for that? I was like, the paperwork that you've been signing for the last 5 years is right there. It says box rental. She never knew.
Wow. 5 years, $500 a day.
No, $500 a project.
Oh, a project.
Yeah.
Well, that's fucked.
Yeah. So to answer your question, it's already there if you just read your paperwork,
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people. I mean, obviously it's a different department, but like I'm not going to get a fucking kit fee from I'm a third. There's certain people in other departments that it's like that person gets it. Why would that person get it? It's
Yeah.
like,
Well, that's why production gives you expendables, because they're not going to.
well, they're not getting it to me. It's the department. There is that difference.
Let's weigh this out. Would I rather the expendable
Or the kiffy, yeah.
Well, also to answer, to kind of piggyback on your question, sometimes cosmetic companies will, because they know,
they want
they'll
their
send
stuff
me,
listed.
yeah, they'll
They'll
send me
send you
stuff,
things.
yeah.
Oh, that's
Which
cool.
I do get that.
Do you reach out to them for that kind of stuff? You're like, hey, I'm working on this project. I think you guys would be a good fit. Send it to me. Nice.
Oh, that's awesome.
What kind of?
What can they say? Yes or no?
Well, I guess what kind of credit do they expect when they do? Like, do they like? I mean, you don't have the power to put them in the credits of like a show or whatever, do you? Like,
it just kind of depends. So the ones that I've reached out to, they've never said, okay, but could you mention us? They've never. I guess they just assume that if I'm asking, I'm going to mention them. But I did, like the last guy that I reached out to, I told him, I said, listen, I do a lot of film and television and I can't necessarily post, but if I ever do something on my own, then I would mention. So when I went to South Africa, because that was my, my own gig, I used the products there, and then we just did some video footage.
and I'm assuming actors or whoever's your talent must ask you sometime. Like if they see their makeup, they go, "Oh, I look good." Like they'll probably ask you what you used.
Yeah, can I tell you a story about that though?
Yeah.
Please.
It's interesting.
Okay.
So I'm not a huge social media guru.
Okay.
And part of it is because I do a lot of film and television. I sign NDAs. I can't necessarily
Right.
post all of the stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I have a really good website, MavisPayne.com. So, shameless plug. And so people will ask me, like, do you have IG? And I tell them, I say, I have IG, but I don't post a lot of my, content. I have a website. You if you want to see my portfolio, whatever.
Right.
So I was working on this show, and this was a child actor who is now an adult. So she was like really big back in the day, and now she's an adult, and she got hired on the show. They hired me as the makeup artist. And so she's sitting in my chair and I'm doing her makeup and she's like, oh, what's that? Oh, what's that? Oh, what's that? Right? So at the end, she's like, can I write down everything that you used on my face? I'm like, sure. I'm like feeling this, like, yeah. And so she's writing down, blah, blah, blah. She goes, what's your IG? I'm going to follow you. And I didn't give her the spiel, like, I don't do a lot of, she was in my chair loving everything that I did on her face. But when she went to my IG, she said, you don't have enough followers. And she did not follow me.
What?
Damn, Gen Z is fucking that.
She should just post her face and tag you.
Even
like
though
that.
she loved everything that I did.
It's so weird.
I mean, you could have more followers if she followed you. That's basic math.
But yeah, so yeah,
Interesting.
it was very interesting.
Did you end up, how did you feel after that? Like, what was
Horrible.
What was the? Yeah, like, was there?
Did that push you
feel
to
good?
want to do
Right.
better on
No.
Instagram? Okay, so then it doesn't
No,
matter.
because I feel like this, like social media has its place. But it's not real life. You're sitting here in real life. You have the evidence of what I can do.
Yeah.
But because I don't have all of this, yeah. But you know what? It made me go back and look at the makeup artists that I follow, like from back in the day, they have even less followers than me. You know why? Because we're working.
Yeah.
That's what it is. You don't have
You're
time
living
to
real
build
life.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the stuff that I see, it's like you said, it's like you sign NDA for the show or whatever. It's like maybe the red carpet look, or if you're doing an interview, like a promotion for that's the stuff that you can post because they want, like, that's what it's for. So it's like, unless you're doing that specifically, you're right, you can't share it.
Yeah.
You know, you can't give away the character. That's the point of the show. Like,
Yeah. And I've actually had producers or directors tell me, even some key makeup artists will tell me they've hired people based solely on their photos that they are posted, and then when they got to set, they couldn't do it.
What?
Yeah, I was like, because it's, there are so many things. You have filters, you have all type of things that you can use. But she
Right.
had the real life, I'm actually doing it, and she's like, nope.
Can you tell on like social media when things are filtered versus
Oh yeah.
really?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
She's like, that ain't real skin.
Oh yeah.
I know scans last to you.
I know my skin.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. In fact, I did a shoot not too long ago. It was for a huge production, a huge network, and the photos were so. This was a not a video shoot. This was a photo shoot.
Okay.
The photos, they tweak the photos so much, I won't even post them on my own website.
Wow.
Really?
Because it's not your work. Yeah.
Nope.
Does it even look like
And
the artist?
it looks plastic to me.
Oh,
That's just the word.
jeez.
It just, like, but it was for like a huge ad or whatever. But once I got it back, and I was like, I don't even like it.
Here's a
lot of
question.
that? Oh yeah.
Do you have a preference or a style? Because I grew up in the BT era, like music videos, like the fly girls and like the kind of
Fly
representation you see of women on camera, right, has really changed over the last 10 or 15 years. When you think about like plastic surgery and like the kind of blending that happens now, like there was definitely more of I would say a natural look for makeup, and where it feels now there's a lot of this makeup that just covers up a lot of things. Do you have, obviously you do what the client wants, but is there like a preference you have for how you do your makeup for someone for your projects?
No, not really. I always say the client is the driver. So if the talent wants over the top, I will voice my opinion and say, well, I don't think, for example, I worked on this. Oh gosh, so many stories.
Tell us.
I worked on this show, and I prefer to have my own suite and my own client.
Okay.
But on some shows, it's like an assembly line.
Yeah.
It's just like a whole bunch of makeup artists, and then whomever comes in, you just keep them going. And so this was that particular instance, and I had this talent sit, and she was actually one of the honorees of the show. So she comes and she sits in my chair, and the makeup artist next to me was doing someone's makeup who was probably like a background dancer, and she was like in her 20s. My particular client was like late 60s, and she looks over and she sees the other makeup artist applying glitter on the background dancer's eyes, and she's like, I want that. And I was like, how can I say this?
Yeah.
And I was like, you want that? And she's like, yes, I want that. And in my head, I was like, darn it, what am I going to say? So I was like, well, those glitter doesn't necessarily look that great when you're, like under the lighting, like, I don't know exactly what I said, but like when you're going to be on like center stage, you're going to be, and she's like, I want that. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
So
Is that like you go to the producer at that point, or are you like be like, I don't think this is gonna work?
Hired by a head makeup artist that was like in the suites doing Michelle Obama or somebody. So I'm just like, oh crap. So I'm just like, you sure? She's like, yes. So I'm like cringing. I had to do it. I'm just cringing. So immediately when she got up, I texted the head makeup artist and I was like, just so you know, this was not my idea. She wanted it. And then she was like, girl, what are you going to do? You know? And so when it aired, I was just like cringing. I mean, you know, I cheered it out where, you know, it looked good, but yeah. We shouldn't have done that, you know. Yeah, like, don't try this at home. You know, we shouldn't have done that. But I mean, it ended up looking okay, but never ideal. So yeah.
Is there like competition, or you know how you get like office drama in 9-to-5 job?
Oh,
Is that same competition when you're working with other artists?
Absolutely, because the artists are peeking over to see what you're doing, and yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
So maybe, let's talk a little bit about dynamics on set, working with other makeup artists, and like, how does that work? Is it always like, oh, everyone's really friendly, or do you have some like tension that happens between you guys?
In my experience, I've not experienced the tension per se, but a lot of competition. For example, I worked on a show, and this makeup artist came. I don't even know how he got backstage, because he wasn't like part of he may have been with one of, so some artists on this particular show, you have the makeup room with a couple makeup artists, and then some of the talent bring their own makeup artists.
Okay.
And so for some reason, he came in there and he was just like kind of watching us do makeup. It was me and another makeup artist, and he was just sitting there watching. And then when the producer came in, he gave her his business card. And she came back and told me, she was like, he gave me his business. I don't need his business card. So, but he just never he wasn't friendly or anything. He just kind of watched us. So you always get those where, you know, I can do makeup better than her, or I can do, you know, whatever. But again, I know his work, and I'd never seen television makeup. And so to that point, a lot of people think that they can automatically transition from retail beauty. I mean, I had to learn it to television or whatever. And so, yeah, I've experienced those, or there's other makeup artists, and, you know, they're watching what you do, or they don't necessarily, you know, be catty or anything, but you can tell from the tension that
little passive aggressive.
Yeah, I haven't had, you know, super bad experiences with that. But I did work on a show, and there was a makeup artist, and I think she was fairly green. But she asked if I had any lashes, right? And so I was like, sure. So I had like a tray, and I was like, you know, just take what you need, and, you know. So at the end of the day, I was like, where are my lashes? And she had them in her kit. She was packed up, ready to go. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. I thought that I gave those back to you, you know. So
she knew she did it.
No, that's how you build your kit. We talked about
right, exactly. So because of that, I have like marked everything in my kit. Like even my brushes.
Got like a little barcode or something?
Well, no, I just put MP on it. And then even my brushes, I bought this like really pretty colorful tape. And so all of my brushes, I have like that tape around them, and then I dip them in some paint. So like I always know what my brushes are.
That's smart.
Yeah, because you just, you know, your stuff can just disappear.
For sure. I mean, I remember labeling my Leatherman like that, because like Leathermans will disappear on set.
What's the Leatherman?
It's one of those multi-tools. It's like a pliers, a knife, like a thing. I
Like a
remember
Swiss Army knife. Like, it has all those little components.
I remember I opened mine up, and inside where like the knives are, I opened them up and I put a piece of tape in there, and I wrote my name, and then I closed the knives up. So like you really have to like
smart.
You
Every
can't pull
time
that label.
when I order a new one, it's got my name and my number on it.
Oh, nice.
So it's because you like the Leatherman will engrave it. It's not a Swiss Army knife, because I have one of those in my kit too, and people always make fun of me. Very different tool. But I use it a lot.
Can we say more good things about Leatherman so we get sponsored, please?
Oh,
Dude, I would fucking
be
love
awesome.
that if
Yeah.
Leatherman sent us shit.
Awesome.
I mean, Leatherman's a great. I wish they would make one that was like TSA safe, because TSA is always taking my Leatherman.
Oh, yeah.
I need a Leatherman with no knives.
It's a
Just
Leatherman, but all
just small. It
plastic.
has to be below the,
They
the
make
leg.
there's like a keychain.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
It's like
And
it's
they won't
literally
take it?
no, they probably would. It's still a knife.
But you can have a knife with a certain length, I think, right? So how many
no, that's
inches?
New York.
It totally depends on your teeth. I think
Alan, look that up.
No, some of them will take nail clippers, dude.
No,
Like,
yeah,
no
sure.
blades, no blades.
Yeah, well, that has changed. TSA has changed how I pack my kit when I'm traveling.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna ask you,
It depends
like-
on the airport. It depends on who
Yeah.
your agent is. Like some of them, like we flew last month, and they were like, "Why are you taking your shoes off?" I'm like, "Because every other airport in the entire country makes me take my shoes off. Well, don't get mad at me because I'm doing what every other
You don't
person
have
makes."
pre-check?
Bert, stop resisting.
Dude, I just got global entry,
I mean,
so.
I remember when we traveled with you on Apocalypse Now This on that show. You were always getting like either randomly selected or pulled aside. It was like you were
Because of that
we were
Leatherman he has on his
convinced-
It's
chain.
the beard.
I was
It's
convinced.
legit. If
No.
dude, I stopped.
beard.
I'm convinced he was on a list.
No,
Bert's on a list.
TSA threw away a brand new $60
3.5
thing of
ounces.
lotion.
That you had in your bag?
Oh, fuck.
Because it was above the.
3.5 or 4 ounces.
Brand new. I'm
That
so
sucks.
mad.
Did you forget or did you just not know at the time?
Yeah, I didn't even think about it. It's just like, oh, I'm taking this. And they're like, no, you're not.
Yeah. So how do you pack your kit now when you travel?
Very lightly. But like sometimes, like you said, it depends on the airport. Like sometimes my shears would, you know, cause alarm and they'll take them out, and then sometimes they don't. So it's just weird. But I try
damn.
not to, like, anything that I know that could be flagged, I just put it in my checked.
Yeah, you
bag.
just check
Jim's
in.
boom pole.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But where were we flying from? Somewhere was like ski country or something.
I think that was the Seattle shoot.
Was it Seattle or were we coming from? I forget. Yeah, like we had a sound op. Like he had to check his boom pole because
they said it was a
considered
weapon.
a weapon.
Oh, God.
I thought his
And
boom pole was like a bow staff.
But we had already gone through like the whole check-in process, and we were going through security, and they stopped them at security. And like luckily there was enough time for him to go
Well, and
back.
this is also the 6th flight now. You know, it's like
Yeah.
how many times did he fly
yeah.
with it? We went all over
Wow.
the place.
There's no standard. There's no, like, standard.
it's just
anywhere.
whoever's on the job that
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, I try not to check my kit. So my kit is a backpack kit.
Okay.
So I always want that with me because, you know, I'm just always thinking like I have expensive brushes in here and that type of thing. And I don't want anybody to feel, you know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
tested.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
Let's
Yeah.
talk about that. Let's talk about your kit a little more, like in detail. When you talk about like 5 essentials of your kit that are like mandatory to have, and then maybe like 1 or 2 like over the top things that you found helpful.
All right. So I always have lash glue because it could serve other purposes.
Like what?
What does it serve?
You know, if someone has a sleeve, the button is broken off or something you can just kind of like use lash glue. You just never know. Like on set, so many things happen. So I always try to have lash glue.
Helping out the wardrobe department. Very nice.
One of the things that I always forget to purchase, but I think it's a necessity, and I always try to steal it from wardrobe, is the tops, the 2-sided tape.
Top stick.
Whole industry
stick.
runs on tape.
That's it. Always. Believe it or not, I always include in my kit the little clothespins.
Oh, really?
Clothespins.
Because I've been on set and someone's top is not fitting snug enough, and people are like, "Do you have a clamp? Do you have a clamp?" So I put them in my kit now. So I always have them.
Are those like the fun ones? But those aren't like necessity for makeup, right? Or are you
No, but I always keep them in. He asked me my top 5 things.
No, but but that's like I'm surprised because I would think you'd be more along the line of like brushes.
She uses it to pinch their cheeks for blush when she doesn't have
I
it.
mean, well, you're always gonna have brushes. You're always gonna have eyeshadows. You're always gonna have, blush. I just think those are standard. But
Is there a type of brush? Because I feel like all brushes aren't the same.
no, so obviously because I started out with MAC, I have a lot of MAC brushes. The brushes are different now than they were when I started. It's like, so pretty much everything is kind of moving towards synthetic now, but I have like the
badger hair.
badger hair. Oh, yes.
What's the
gold
difference?
hair ones. You can tell the difference with the application.
Okay.
The way the product kind of glides on the skin.
Yeah.
But
I didn't even think about
it's
that.
less. Yeah, it's less expensive. I mean, less expensive to make, produce them now with synthetic. But
Oh, I see.
yeah, but the goat hair and all of that, badger hair, they're going to be more expensive, but they're going to last longer.
Did you ever have to consider like this is probably weird when someone's allergic to badger hair on a brush, or did that ever come up, or like goat hair?
I haven't had that, but I can imagine that has happened before, that people are allergic to, the hair.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's hair, not fur. It's like
Not
a
fur.
it's like a
Hair.
hyperallergenic
see.
dog.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like golden doodle
Like a
hair.
dog or, yeah.
Total
Yeah.
doodle.
Another thing that I always have in my kit is blot film. And you don't see a lot of people using it now because people will be like, what's that?
Yeah.
But when I first started out, that was like a big thing, and they're hard to find now.
Is that like oil? Like to get oil
so
off?
instead of like adding powder on top of the person, like you already have their foundation on and their face made, instead of adding powder, you just it takes away
Take
the
some oil.
off. What else is one of the things? I always try to have lotion, because for some reason when people are on set, they look down and be like, oh, I need lotion. So I always try to have those things and they're always surprised, like, oh, you have this? So I always try to have those things that,
Does makeup do nails?
no.
Whose job is that? This is
The manicurist or the nail person?
Is that a thing?
Is that a position? No, seriously, that's a good
legit,
question.
Seriously, I have been asked that before, and I was like, I don't do nails. They were like, oh, we could just send you a YouTube and you can watch it. And I was like, no, I don't do nails.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, but you
Well, 'cause
normally,
I mean, we talked a little bit earlier. It's it's like people say grip and electric. It's two different departments. People say hair and makeup. That's two different
Yeah,
departments.
you
Like,
also don't do hair,
yeah.
right?
no. I mean,
The conviction in which you said that, like,
She's like, I do my hair.
because hair is tricky, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has their own interpretation, right? And so I was on a shoot once, and I always tried to ask like all of the questions so there's no surprises. And because everyone wants to hire one person to do hair and makeup, right?
Yeah.
And I always try to stress to people, like, listen, I don't advertise myself as a hair person. Obviously, I'm accustomed to doing light styling on set, right? I can put some curls in, but if we're talking about shampooing and all of that. So I was working on this show once, and this is the very first time working with this production company, but the director was hired so he knew me from another show.
yeah.
So I said, listen, this was a celebrity client. And I said, I was excited to work with her. I said, but listen, is she, going to have a hair person? And they said, oh, yeah, you don't have to worry about hair. We told her to come camera ready, which I've learned there are different interpretations of camera ready, right? So we told her to come camera ready. So all you have to do is, makeup. I'm like, cool. So I get there, and she comes in, and she has like an entourage, right? And so I'm thinking, one of these people is her hair person, right? And her hair was curly. She wanted it shampooed, blown straight, and then put curls in it.
Perfect.
And I looked at the director, he was like, we told her to come. So they had to hire someone, and it held up the shooting for like 2 hours.
What? Oh, I'd hate
But
that
I
as
felt
an AD.
horrible because now it looks as if
Like, you're not
You
prepared.
asked.
I'm not prepared.
You asked.
But the talent
Yeah.
don't know that, right?
Yeah.
Everyone else doesn't know that besides you and the producer.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
fucked
Yeah,
up
but the
part.
producer's the one that hires you next time, not the actor.
That's true
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, but I kept getting jobs from the producer. But I felt horrible because it looks like I'm,
Not
a
prepared.
novice. And, but yeah, it held up that we had to wait. They had to call, hire a hairstylist, and the hairstylist had to come.
Did you like prepare yourself for the next one from that experience? Did you like go on YouTube and
No.
learn how to do
No.
that?
It's like, fuck it.
I'm a makeup artist and that's it. No. So that did teach me now to start, so I did start to, even though I'm really, really funny about hair, like I've never been like a hair person. I've always gone, from little, I've always, gone to get my hair done. So I never really had to worry about it. But now I always have a flat iron. You would be so impressed with my hair kit, man. You guys, you would think that, oh, wow, she does hair. No, I don't. It just looks very impressive. So I have you know what? I bought these things and I used it the other day. I asked the talent, I was like, have you ever used it? She's like, no. So because I'm not a hairstylist, no, I try to be prepared. So while I'm doing the makeup, there's these rods, right? And you don't have to warm them up or anything. And you just rod their hair up. And then I just leave them in there while I do her makeup. And then when I take them down, she has nice, pretty curls. It looks like, I did.
Sounds like you do hair.
Yeah.
If a producer comes up to you, and I mean, I guess in those situations you're doing hair is because they don't have a hairstylist. Is that like an additional kit, additional rate? Like, do you get more money for that? Or are you just going above and beyond and being giving?
It just kind of depends. If it's, if it's something where it's super simple, like I can take a flat iron or a curling iron and place curls in, I'm not going to be like, oh, well, I need to add $150. I'm not going to do that. But if it's on the spot, I'm not going to be like, oh, you have to add money to my rate.
Well, what if it takes time away from the makeup you have to do? Like, there's a whole thing there, too.
Does that affect you? Yeah.
Well, normally, when I get a call, I always ask about hair. If they say, and I always specify, look, light styling only. If you need anything above that, then I recommend that, you either hire a makeup artist that can do both or a hairstylist. And I've never had anyone who's like, oh, no, well, we need a hairstylist. But I tell them, but if it's going to be, something substantial, then we would have to increase the rate. So
right.
I've never really had that issue because for the most part, we're doing, docs or, stuff like that, corporate shoots. You're not going to have someone that's it's those celebrity clients. Those are the ones I'm telling you.
Did you ever get a call to do something with a celebrity client and you got nervous because you were like, man, I want to make a good impression? Or do you always just kind of going all right, I think I'm good. There's no real concerns here.
Yeah.
I was working on a shoot, and there was 2 makeup artists, myself and another makeup artist, and the other makeup artist had longevity. And the producer comes in and she whispers to me, and she goes, "Get a kit together. I want you to do Dr. Maya Angelou." And
whoa,
God,
my heart just started beating so fast, but I had poker face and I was like, okay, but I'm putting the kit together and I'm just in my head, oh my God. So I'm not starstruck, right? But if I were to be starstruck, that is the person you want to be starstruck.
Yeah.
Fuck yes.
But then I'm also trying to play it cool because the other makeup artists over there will probably be like,
right.
What the fuck? Why her?
Right, I've been here.
Yeah.
So I put this kit together, and she takes me into the suite, and I'm walking in, and I feel like I'm walking on air, right? Because I'm just I don't believe. So I'm talking to myself in my head, I don't believe this. Oh my God, this is amazing. And the thing that I loved about the entire experience is that she had all of these people around her, but she just focused on me. And she's like, "Hello, what is your name?" And then they were telling me that she had an allergy, so I had to use her products.
Okay.
And so I was doing her makeup, and she was just asking me all these questions so how long have you been doing this? What is your name? She was just so nice, I was totally thinking oh my gosh, what am I going to say? But I didn't even have time to even consider what I was going to say because it was just so easy, sitting here talking with you guys. It was so easy because she just made it all about me. And I felt at that moment, I felt like I was having a conversation with my aunt or my grandmother.
Wow.
And so that was the pinnacle of my career. I'm like, you know what? I can die today. I've touched her. But yeah, it was amazing. And then because I tried to be like very respectful on the set, and so I said to her assistant, I was like, is it okay, to get a photo with her? She's like, sure. And this lady was so regal. At the time, it was towards the end of her life. So at the time, she was in a wheelchair. And she went to stand up to take a picture with me. And I'm like, no, like I will come down to you.
That's sweet.
So yeah, that's just one of the things that always stuck with me. So that was the time that I was just like, oh my gosh.
It's amazing. What a beautiful story.
You spend so many times with so many different people. Personalities. They gotta be some great personalities you work with, and some really not
so great person. I've been pleasantly surprised, and I have been sorely disappointed. There are some people I've worked with that I would never purchase their project again after working with them.
Really?
Because of how they treat people that they don't deem important, like they'll
People they won't follow on Instagram.
Right? People that, I always say we're the help. They'll treat us differently than they treat the host or the producer or whatever. Yeah. But one of the persons that I was very pleasantly surprised with was Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan, so at the time I only knew his television persona. And, he can be pretty, very forceful and opinionated. And I was working on a show, and the anchor of the show, this was my second time working with her, and she said, I was in Washington, D.C. at the time, and she said, I'm going to the Capitol. They were filming something at the Capitol, and she had me come and do her makeup. And she said, and my friend is going to be there. She said, have you met him? Piers. And I'm thinking, Piers who? Because there's Brunson, there's, And she said, Piers Morgan. And I said, no, I've never met him. She goes, I know. Why don't you go with me? And then you can do his makeup too. And I was like, okay. So, but in my head on the way there, I'm thinking Piers Morgan, what is he going to be like? He was so nice. He afterwards, he, invited me to go out to dinner with them. I declined, but, pleasantly surprised. He was such a nice guy and so funny.
That's cool.
That's interesting. I wonder about those type of personalities sometimes, if it's all an act for the camera, and in real life they're just this whole other persona, and but when they're in front of the camera they're this divisive person, or this person that is it's a character, right?
It could be, but I think he's probably as opinionated as we think he is.
Yeah. But it doesn't mean he's necessarily disrespectful to
method personas.
And it doesn't mean that he's rude or not a nice guy. He was a really nice guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've met some characters, seriously.
Oh, man.
Any other ones you want to tell us about?
Are there any actually that are in your book? Is your book solely about tips and tricks and trying to give insight to other makeup artists, or is it full of hot goss and spilling the tea?
I spilled the tea, but I don't break the mug.
Oh,
which means
I like that.
Yeah, I don't disclose names or destroy confidence, I try to use discretion. One guy I worked with, he actually wrote the foreword for my book, and his name is Mo Rocca. You guys know who he is?
The name sounds familiar.
So Mo Rocca, he's an actor, but he's also not a newscaster, but CBS Morning, I think he's on that, and he's a host on a couple of shows. But I met him, I worked on a show called My Grandmother's Ravioli.
Perfect.
It's a great name.
It was really good. It was on the Cooking Channel, and the moral of the show. So we would go to, let's just say you wrote in and you say, my grandmother makes the best lasagna, whatever. And so the team would come and they would scout, and they, if they decided they wanted you on the show, we would be with your family 2 days in a row. So the first day we would come in and we would meet your grandmother, and then she would make her famous lasagna, the entire
Crazy.
thing. And then the next day we would film her making something else, but she would have her whole family. And so we would just like film the family dinner. It was a great show. Like, people are still asking for that show to return because it was such a great show. So Mo Rocca was the host of the show. And what I loved about working with him is that, like, for example, we were in Philadelphia walking along the streets, filming. And so many people would be like, oh my God, that's Mo Rocca. And he would stop and hold a conversation with everybody. I love that. Like, and he's so funny because he's a comedian as well. But he's so funny, and he would just make you feel like you are the only person, on the street.
Yeah.
And I loved that about him. And
man.
when I reached out to him, because, once I decided to write my book, I'm like, who's going to write the foreword? Who's going to write the foreword? And I had another person that I considered first. And then I thought about Mo. And then so I reached out to him. I was like, Mo, it's like, would you consider writing my foreword? And he was like, I am honored that you asked me.
Wow.
And in my head, I was like, what? And he wrote the foreword to my book. And one of the things he said, Jonathan, is that how he noticed how I would just make the talent so relaxed,
Yeah.
when it was time for them. He said, Mavis is the first person that they see, and a lot of times, the talent weren't people that were accustomed to being on set. And so, but he was the nicest person.
What gave you that confidence to reach out to him and ask him to write the foreword? Because that's really takes confidence, I think, for someone to go like, oh, I wrote this book and like, I want you to write this foreword for me.
Well, number one, I felt like I had a rapport with him. We worked on that show, I want to say 6 months maybe. So I felt like I had a rapport with him. And then the other thing I learned by being in this industry, it's only yes or no. You know?
That's the worst they could say is no.
Worst thing they can say is no.
Worst thing they can say is ew.
No.
But and we still, to this day, I'll get an email from him. It's like, hey, Mavis, how's it going? Or I'll reach out. It's like, hey, and he'll be like, let's get together for drinks or something. So
That's
That's
great.
so cool.
You worked with him for a while. Like, have you ever had, or have you ever wanted any? I don't know. Have you ever wanted to be like a consistent artist for one person? Has that happened to you, or do you want it to?
I wanted it to happen once I started. So to be clear, I've never endeavored to work with celebrities. I just, just like, what? I just enjoy doing what I do. So even if the person is not a celebrity, if it's a prom girl, they're going to get the best that I have, right? Regardless.
Yeah, right.
More sparkles for them, though.
More glitter.
More
glitter.
So but once I started to work with celebrities, I thought it was pretty cool that the artists that I knew that worked with a celebrity consistently, they were like getting all these followers. They were, they were rock stars because they had this, steady gig. What changed that for me is there was an instance where a huge celebrity, something was leaked, and she blamed her makeup artist. And it was they had a long-term relationship. And she blamed her makeup artist. It was like it was public, and fired him, only to discover that it wasn't him.
Oh, man.
Ugh.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I think she rehired him, but
You went back?
Yes, but the relationship, he's not there now because the relationship was never the same.
Yeah.
Tarnished at that point, yeah.
So I thought about that, but the other thing I thought about was this: if they don't eat, you don't eat. So you know what I mean? Like if they fall off, then you gotta go. So that just kind of made me think like, I mean, it would still be cool, but that's not a goal of mine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious about your book, Lipgloss Chronicles: Confessions of a Celebrity Makeup Artist. What inspired you to write a book? Like, what was did you have a goal in mind, or did you just feel like you had something that you wanted to share?
COVID inspired me.
Okay. Free time.
When COVID happened, I mean, we didn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, growing up, even in high school, I loved creative writing. And then when I became an adult, I would like write in my journal and stuff like that. So it was always like relaxing and therapeutic for me. And I always kind of thought like, or I would talk to people and they were like, you should write a book, you know, from my experiences, not just in the industry, in life. And, you know, I just like, okay, whatever. So when COVID happened, it was just kind of like,
What am I going to do?
what am I going to do? And I just kept hearing, write a book. And so I'm a woman of faith. So I was thinking that it was going to be faith-based. And I was just like, no, I should write about my career.
Yeah.
And I should make it where it would translate across any genre. It's something that everybody could use.
Yeah.
And so that's the feedback that I have been getting, is that, you know, it's not just for makeup artists, it's for anybody that wants to know how to navigate, you know, in those spaces. So
That's awesome.
You are, I would say and argue that you are a confidant for people when they're on set, right? You're like almost like, I'm not necessarily like therapist, but like you hear a lot of what they're going through in their life and their time. How does that moment where you tell yourself, I'm gonna write this book, but like I can't really tell these stories mentioning names, and was there a lot of lawyers involved in this, or like what was that process like creating it?
yeah, I was clueless. I thought I could just write and mention people and that type of thing. And so the publisher that I hired, she was very good. She was very hands-on. She walked me through everything, and she was the one that told me, she's like, you can't mention names unless you get releases, and you can't put their photo in your book. And I was like, they're on my website. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
She said, but you're not making money off of it. You're going to be making money off of your book. That's different.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I took it upon myself to consult an IP attorney. And, you know, he gave me advice. And so the people that I wanted to mention or that I wanted to include their photo, I reached out to them, and most of them responded back and said, sure.
Did they want to know the story you were going to tell?
Nope.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. I feel like a lot of people just get discouraged at that point where they're like, I don't know if they're going to want me like to talk about them. And they
Well,
would stop
it's probably
there.
like, I would assume these are not bad experiences that you're sharing.
I was going to
right?
say,
Yeah.
because they know they didn't have a bad experience with me. So they're like, sure.
We follow you on Instagram, Mavis.
So they're sure. You know, I did mention some bad experiences that I had because I think it's important. You know, I think, you know, I was thrust into this, and with no mentor, you know, no one to say, hey, watch out for this, watch out for that. I mean, hey, I had an agent who was supposed to be getting 20% and I'm getting 80, only to discover she was getting 80 and I was getting 20 when I first started out. So I never want anyone else to go through that. So there are things that I, you know, in every chapter, I have what I call an artist tip. And, you know, it's little tidbits that people may not tell you. Like, for example, this is not necessarily one of the tips, but I talk about it in the book, is that a lot of people are so happy and so eager to work with celebrities that they don't consider the cost. Like, you know, you have to have discretion. You have to hear things and pretend you don't hear it. You're going to be privy to some things that you shouldn't be privy to. And, you know, so many young artists are so eager to, you know, work the room instead of gauging the room. You know, everybody
that's
wants to go
important.
around and hang, you know, hobnob. I was with a celebrity and worked on the show for a few days, and at the end, you know, they asked me to go out to dinner with them, and I politely declined because I always kind of want to have that
Boundary.
professional, boundary. You know, 'cause sometimes you're gonna, you know, if you're out to eat, you're drinking or whatever, things can get a little lax, and you don't ever want that to like dampen your next encounter
Yeah.
with them. So
Yeah. You want to keep that like professional face with them as
Yeah.
opposed to that like friendship relationship.
yeah, and you have to know, you have to kind of like gauge everything. I worked on a show once with a I think it was a rap group, and they were doing a video, and they hired me to do their makeup, and they had rented out this warehouse or whatever, and people just kept coming, like it was turning into a party.
Yeah.
And I'm like, was feeling very uncomfortable. It was like all this alcohol and stuff. And so the guy that hired me, leader of the group, he came back and he goes, "Hey, Mavis, you're done, but you are welcome to stay and party with us or whatever." And he paid me. He even paid me, like tipped me really well.
Nice.
And I said, "Oh no, I think I'm gonna leave." So I packed up and I left. And then like a couple days later, I emailed him. I was like, "Hey, just want to know, you know, how the shoot went or whatever." And he was like, "We didn't even get to film the video." He's like, "Someone got
Shit.
shot."
Oh my God.
Just imagine, like I could have been, you know.
Holy fuck.
So I always say, like, gauge the room, like, you know,
Yeah.
gauge the scene. Don't be so eager, just like hang out and hobnob, because that could not be your scene, you know.
That's nuts.
That's fucked up. Oh my goodness.
God.
Yeah.
So in our intro, you said artist, writer, and speaker.
Yes.
What's the speaker aspect of this? Of who you are?
So I have always been terrified of speaking. Always.
Public speaking?
Public
or-
speaking.
Okay.
Always. And in January of this year, I was invited to South Africa to speak about my experience. So it was a faith-based organization, and they were focusing on women entrepreneurship. And they reached out to me, and I'm just like, "Oh, you guys want me to come and do makeup?" They said, "No, we want you to come and speak." I'm like, "What?" So I went, and it was in March, and I had 2 sessions. The first session was speaking, and then the other session was a makeup demo. And after the first session, you know, you have a general session where everyone comes back in and they talk about, you know, what happened in their breakout sessions or whatever. And this young lady stood up. She probably was like, you know, 21, 22 or whatever. And she stood up and she said, when I spoke, it unlocked something inside of her where she knew like what her purpose was, what she was supposed to do. And that just changed my life. It's like, oh, so I am really supposed to be, because I always felt like I was supposed to speak in some capacity. And being a woman of faith, I always thought it was just going to be like faith-based and, you know, and I was like, I don't know how to get into that because that's not, you know, something that I'm comfortable with. And I started to just embrace it. And now, as you guys know, you're asking me here, but I've been, you know, getting invitations to speak. So I started in August of this year. I started Beauty Speaks. So Beauty Speaks is the speaking portion of my business, where I, you know, am available for conferences or, you know, events. So, yeah.
And and when you talk about things, you're not just talking about the industry.
Nope.
There are other components too.
Just life in general. I mean, because we all have life experiences,
Yeah.
things that can help someone. But, obviously because of my profession, I can always kind of tie that into it. I have my book, I have my own products, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a new grandmother.
Wow.
So thank you. So there are a lot of things that I can offer my input.
Yeah, just your experience.
I'm just curious, but the woman that approached you, do you remember what she said her purpose was now?
Well, you know what? She just sent me, she just did a youth conference in because she lives in South Africa. She just did a youth conference. And so I was able to sew into her youth conference that she just did. And she sent photos and stuff. So I think that, it's mostly faith-based, and she just probably had some fear. And she said it was just like me speaking, because I talked about, having a purpose and not doing anything with it,
Yeah.
And I talked about, years ago, I remember this lady in church told me, she said, God said you're going to minister to women all over the world. And immediately I was fearful, because I was like, I've always been afraid to speak. But I said to them in South Africa, but look where I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not only that, I have touched women's faces from all walks of life all over the world. So, that helped. She said that just helped her. We're like, oh, I can do this. I talked about the obstacles that I had. Even as when I graduated from high school, I received a full ride to Ohio State University School of Nursing. Discovered I was pregnant and never attended. And then so I'm thinking, that opportunity is past, but, my path was still charted.
Yeah.
Next opportunity will present itself.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know much about hair and makeup when it comes to like unions and stuff, but are there unions in makeup that like you are now thinking about helping being a voice for and helping represent people in the industry?
There is a hair and makeup union. I've toyed with the idea of joining, but I don't think, I don't know, but I don't believe that there's an opportunity for like mentoring. I think they just, are you available to work?
Yeah.
But I do, offer a couple times a year. I tend to like do a makeup workshop.
Okay.
So we can like teach technique and also talk about, things to do on set, etiquette, those type of things. But
Yeah.
But
think
I don't
that's
know
important.
I don't know about the mentor part in the union. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. Well, what do you have happening next? Do you have anything in your future, like as far as like pursuing your, like, I don't know, like improving on your educational career as a makeup artist or?
Yes. So I was just awarded a scholarship to FIT.
Yes.
So I'm super excited about that. It's a fashion styling course. So, how they loop everything together, makeup and hair. So we'll do makeup, hair, and wardrobe, I guess. But the thing that I loved about this program is that it's not just technique. So they teach branding and how to write vision boards and how to write business plans and those type of things. So it's like all encompassing. And obviously it's fashion styling, but it teaches how everything works together on set. And so I don't endeavor to even be a wardrobe stylist or anything, but having the working knowledge of it is only going to make me a better makeup artist.
Yeah.
So I'm super,
Never stop learning.
For sure.
super excited
That's
about
awesome.
it. Yeah.
Do you have any advice for, much like that person you inspired in South Africa, anyone here, like on this side of the planet, or just anyone interested in getting into hair, makeup specifically, or being an artist? Do you have any advice for them, like starting out, or even as like people that are in the industry just starting, getting kind of their, their foot in the door? Like, do you have any advice for them to kind of guide them as they look into this career?
Sure. Number one, I would say study your craft, because so many people just think, oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
But there's so many different components. Like, for example, until I moved to New York, I didn't even know that how many different types of productions there are, like,
Yeah.
wow, I can work, I can do a documentary today, I can do a corporate shoot tomorrow, I can work on a reality show. Like, I didn't realize, that there are so many areas and there are so many different type of production companies. And like, you knock on the door and they say no, then there's like 200 more on the same block, right? So I would say study your craft. I would also say, and I said this before, not to pigeonhole yourself.
Yeah.
Don't just say, I want to do makeup like that. Because what happens, makeup is about trends. Focus on the things that are constant, the things that won't change. Having great time management, having discretion, being professional, those type of things. We tend to think like, oh, I just want to work with celebrities. Like, there's so many other people out here, that will keep you. Celebrity may call you once a year, where you build relationships with people like Jonathan, and you'll always work, What else would I?
John's going to be a celebrity soon. Like, he's making a podcast.
I hope not.
Jonathan is already a celebrity. He's behind the scenes.
Anytime we don't need a host, he's the first one who goes, I'll sit down.
John's like, oh, God, I don't have to be in
I got this.
I don't know. I mean,
Sits with me and I'm starstruck.
Yeah, but I would say study your craft. Always be learning, like you said. Don't ever think you know it all, and just have fun with it. There's when I don't even feel like it's a job.
Yeah.
Because it's something that I love to do, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who I'm doing makeup on. I'm excited about it. My husband tells me all the time. It's like if I get a shoot, he's like, oh, you won't sleep tonight, because my mind is like always going.
Yeah.
Making sure I got this, and especially if it's a new client, you just like, you really want everything.
You want to impress.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily impress, but you just want to make sure, they call you back.
Yeah, for
For
sure.
the next one.
Yeah.
I'd like to go a little more in detail about like basic rates or starting rates when it comes to like doing a commercial versus doing a doc. Like, what should potential makeup artists in the industry look for pricing of, like, when someone asks me, what's your rate, right? Is it like, well, do you fight with the producer, like, what's your budget? Or are you more like, eventually you're going to have to give your rate, and like, what is that? Like, what should future makeup artists expect as like a beginning intermediate rate?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that question, because it's very important. And even to talk about an advice that I could give to an aspiring makeup artist, the other thing I wanted to interject is, don't expect to get the rate that someone who's already established is getting. And I think that's a mistake that we make sometimes. It's like, oh, how much do you make? Well, you're not going to get what I make, because I've been doing this 20 years and you're just starting.
Yeah.
Regarding rate, is something else that I learned in the field, is that there's a rate that's already set, and then there's a production where they ask, what is your rate?
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of times the production company will say, hey, are you available for such and such? We have, a shoot Wednesday and Thursday, and the rate is. But then there are other times where they'll reach out to you and say, hey, we have a shoot Wednesday and Thursday. What is your rate? Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So when it comes to what is your rate, I always say you need to know, that's part of being prepared and doing your research. You need to know what the going rate is for that market, right? LA has a total different rate than New York.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. I found that out.
More or less.
LA's rate is a lot lower.
Are we allowed? Can we just speak about it a little bit? Just not necessarily your rate, but like, what would be a rate if you're asking
Because there's
someone?
more people.
So I don't don't know why it is. I'm thinking it's because it's more saturated. But for example, I get requests a lot from producers who are coming to New York filming, and usually their rate is probably $200 less than the New York rate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
For labor or for labor and kit?
for the entire.
Okay.
For labor and kit. So normally, now that I'm established, before I would just take it, but now it's like, well, no, my rate is such and such, and I usually get it. So the standard, it just kind of depends on what the project is. But I can't even say what the standard is now, because since COVID, everything has changed. So I have noticed that the rate has increased since COVID. For example, just like a standard, I don't know, corporate shoot, it kind of depends. It can go from, I've gotten a rate from $700 a day to $1,500 a day.
That's with or without kit?
That's everything included.
Everything included.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is like $1,500. I got a shoot earlier in the year, and actually when they emailed me, I thought it was a typo.
Oh, really?
The rate was so high, I was like, yes.
I was in the middle of a job, but hold on a second.
Let me say yes before they discover. I really thought that it was a typo, but it was like for a huge company. They were like, okay.
Hey, got that shit in writing.
Yeah, so I would say, do your research, ask questions, because a lot of times the questions that you ask set you apart, especially if it's someone that you haven't worked before. They know, like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, we got to pay her.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think someone once said, I can't remember who the person was, but they were talking about when you're discussing rates and what the budget is, and if you can't win, like, well, what's your budget before you have to say your rate, is go high. And if you get that, oh, wow, that's high, you're like, okay, I hit the cap and then we can work down. Versus if they go, okay, then you're like, fuck, I could have got more.
I've done that before. I've said okay.
That was Mike. That was absolutely Mike.
I've done that before where I've said okay, and they was like, oh, and they're like, shh, okay, let me lock you in. And in my head, I was like, did I go low? Like, whatever.
You're like,
Yeah, you don't know. Did I hit the number right on the,
But
You're
also,
absolutely-
too, it's about relationship, right?
Yeah.
It's about relationship. So obviously with someone that I've worked with before, if they come out and say, well, you know what, Mavis, the rate is such and such, if I'm not doing something that day, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to finagle about rate that much.
But I think you're absolutely right. The other component of it is like asking the questions. The more questions you ask, the more professional you seem to a producer, and be like, oh wow, like I think so.
Not more. Like if you're talking for 4 days, the shoot already happened.
No, but like there's like specific things you want to ask. Like what is the ask? Like
Well,
what is the shoot?
What are your questions? What
That's a
are,
good
what are
one.
3 questions you ask?
Yeah, I call you, Mavis. I'm like, hey, Mavis, I got a shoot on Wednesday. Are you available?
One of the things I have learned to ask is, where is it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because my house is in Jersey. But, 98% of the jobs I get is Manhattan.
Yeah.
Right? But, like I was approached about a shoot. It was an indie film. And it was like crazy hours from like 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. On Long Island, right? No travel, no transportation provided, right? And the rate was like $300. No.
God, the fucking tolls alone are like
Yeah.
$80. No, seriously, they're fucking
No
expensive.
lodging, no. And I'm like, no. So I have learned, where is it?
Yeah.
I usually don't have to ask the rate. Usually that comes, especially someone I've worked with before. But, obviously, what is the rate? And is hair styling needed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, everyone wants hair and makeup. Or they not necessarily want, they just assume that hair
Yeah.
goes with
Right.
makeup.
Yeah.
You think HMU, you think it's like
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have 2 different profiles on one of the forums that I'm on. One says HMU and then one just says makeup artist. So it just kind of depends, which one I
Which
select.
Mavis do you want? Yeah.
Yeah, which one you want?
Which are you paying for?
And then, Jonathan, to expound on that, once I'm hired, then I'll ask questions like, what is it about? Because you know, I used to just like show up on set and be like, okay, but it helps to have some context and know, like, you know, what is this shoot about? You know, you were talking about being like on set or being outside of the set. Remember that shoot that we did about, I don't know if I could say this, but Jailhouse Lawyers. You remember that one?
Jailhouse Lawyers.
You weren't there, I don't think. I think it was just
so.
Mike.
Might have been Mike. Sounds like
it
a
was
Mike
here.
job.
But yeah, it was like, it was.
Oh yes, in our studio. Yes.
Mike is the
Escape
lawyer.
Artist was the name of the documentary.
That
yeah,
was very intense.
Yeah.
And I sat there and listened to the stories or whatever, and I didn't know what it was about until I got on set that day. And then, but to sit there and listen to their stories and how they were wrongly convicted and incarcerated for 30 years and those type of stories, you have to, you know, kind of prepare for that.
Yeah.
No glitter.
Oh shit, that's what I know you from.
Definitely no glitter. Yes, that's where you know me from.
Yeah. If someone was working in retail, in makeup retail, like how should they go about like transitioning to working in film and television? You know, if they were interested in entering this industry, is it something you'd recommend? And if so, like what advice would you give for them to?
Well, one of the things I wanted to make note of when working in retail, you have a steady stream of clients. The clients are always coming to you, right?
Yeah.
You have to consider when you're going, you know, freelance or you want to work in film and television, and that's something you have to actively pursue. You know, you have to, you know, knock on doors, cold calls. And like I moved here, I had no contacts whatsoever. And I just started cold calling people. But until I landed those gigs, I worked at the retail counter because you're going to always meet somebody,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
right? Someone's always going to need their makeup done. And people come and it's like, oh, you know, my sister is a producer, you know, so.
Yeah.
So to transition, first of all, I think you really have to be committed to it because, you know, freelance is feast or famine.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes my phone is ringing off of the hook. Sometimes I'm declining gigs, and sometimes I'm like, "Is this thing on?" Like, you know. But also, it comes right back to researching and perfecting your craft and understanding that retail beauty is completely different than film and television, and just because I can really do someone's makeup very well. Retail beauty doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate on film. So just, you know, I would say if someone is interested, you know, go for it. You know, there are so many people saying, but, you know, this can stop you and that can stop you. I remember when I got ready to relocate here, this guy said to me, he said, why are you moving to New York? He said, there's so much competition in New York. And I said, you see as competition, I see opportunity. Completely
Perspective.
different.
Yeah, the mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something to say about being where there is no work. Of course, there's not competition. There's no work.
Right.
You know, like, well, yeah. Of course.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I would just say, you know, if that's what someone, you know, if someone is aspiring that wants to do film and television, like just go for it. But, you know, do the work. I get so many emails from people that's like, they just see the celebrity title and they're like, oh, I want to work with you. And I'm like, okay, so what have you done? You know, what research have you done? Because they just want you to give them everything, right?
Yeah.
But just like do the work, you know, network with people. And you have to have a good personality, I think, in order to be successful with it. Because you're going to meet so many different people, right? And it's all about, you know, it's probably 10% of technique and 90% of whether people like you. And I say that all the time. I said, you know, people buy into you.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily buy what you're selling. You know how many people have bought my book and have not read it? They just bought it because it was mine, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what I would say.
So when you're, you know, you're giving all this advice, but like, have you been in a situation where someone didn't want to be in your chair?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I was a freelance for a high-end brand, and we were in a very, very exclusive area, and the person she and her daughter had appointments to get their makeup done. And when she arrived, the counter manager said, okay, so Mavis is going to do your makeup. And she looked at me and she says to the manager, she said, well, is there anybody else that can do my makeup? And she said, no. She said, is there a problem? She said, well, but can't she do white people's makeup? And I heard her and I said, you mean like mimes? And she's like, no, can she do my makeup? Can she do my makeup? She said, I would just rather wait for someone else.
Wait, did you say mime? Like,
Because she said, can she do white makeup? That's what she said. She said, can she do white makeup? I was like, you mean like mine?
Oh man.
And she said, I'll just rather wait for. She said it. I'd rather wait for a white girl.
Oof. And this is in front of you?
Yes.
Do you think that was actually like? I mean, obviously there's a racial component to that, but do you think that's more? Do you think she was doubting your skills, or do you think it was like full on like I don't like black people?
I don't think it was I don't like black people, but I think a lot of times that, if a person is not accustomed to, seeing someone like me, then how would she know that I could do her makeup? Yeah. I've been asked that by a producer in the van on the way. Can you?
Too late. You already hired me.
The talent. Well, the production coordinator hired me. But she was like, "Oh, she's like, the talent is white. Can you do white makeup?" And I said the same line. You mean like mine? That's my thing.
That's an awesome deflection. That is like the best deflection you can have.
That needs to be on a shirt.
What do they say?
And then she said, "No, I mean they are white talent." And I said, "I'm a professional."
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happened?
They were from LA, by the way. So with this particular instance at the counter, kudos to the counter manager, because she said to her, she said, Mavis is the most senior artist that we have here. Mm. And she said, so if you don't want her to do your makeup, you're going to have to reschedule.
Yes.
So she said, okay, well, you can do my daughter's makeup. Do her first. But I think she was
to try out.
Well, no, I think she was thinking if I start on her, then the other artists might
show up.
Yeah. Well, the other artists were there, but they'll be done doing what they're doing, and they can do it.
See.
So I did her daughter's makeup, and she was like, "Oh, can you do me next?" And then she ended up. I think
You're
she
like,
tipped
"Nah, I'm booked."
I'm sorry, I'm booked.
I gotta go.
But she tipped me like $50, and then she's like, "Can I get your card?" So.
Oh man, that's nice. I would have started doing mine. I would have started doing mime work. Like, let me just get a little powder.
Do you know how many times I wish I could mess someone's makeup who was mean, but I'm like, you know what? My name is on this. I can't do it.
You're a professional.
But, yeah.
But that's
Stefan, can you do white scripts?
Yeah, can you AD white scripts?
Do you mean what?
Do you like mimes?
Do you like mimes?
Oh, and to your point about did I think she was just racist? So that taught me, I've learned throughout my tenure doing makeup, is that most of the time, you just got to brush it off.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you will encounter people that, are nasty or rude or whatever, but you just always got to keep in your mind, like my thing in my head is I really talk to myself and be like, just write the check.
I mean, proving her wrong is a great paycheck, like in itself.
Yeah. That cha-ching gets better.
Yeah, 100%. But
I just write the check,
Let me get back.
I love that. Mavis, this has been so much fun. You're a riot, and you're awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and for sharing all your wisdom with us. Can you please tell our audience where can they find your book and where can they find your makeup line?
Sure. First of all, thank you guys for having me. This has been wonderful. I really had a great time. And yes, you can follow me at www.mavis, MAYVISPAYNE.com. On the website, you will find my book. You will also find LIPLOX, which is my lip collection, as well as LASHLOX, which is my false eyelash collection.
That's awesome. And yeah, we'll put that information in the description below so you guys can check it out. Please support Mavis, check out her stuff, and yeah, we will see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching.
Peace.
Later.
Okay, cutting for real.
All right.
All right.
Great.
For real.
Good job.